Hello and welcome to Financial Podcast Future Rich. I'm your host, Barbara Ginty, and I'm also a CFP, which is a certified financial planner. And today I wanted to chat with you about my least favorite vehicle, which is the non-deductible IRA. And so, as I said, we're doing these mini episodes for items that you will hear me discuss with our guests coming up this season. And so non-deductible IRA came up, and I feel like this vehicle is not talked about a lot, and often people don't realize they have one because a lot of people unknowingly have one. And so you've already hopefully listened to the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA. So non-deductible IRA, once again, IRA stands for an individual retirement account, so not affiliated with a workplace plan. It's essentially, most people go into it thinking they're doing a traditional IRA, but if your income is too high, so there's no, unlike a Roth, your income can be whatever you want. If your income is too high, you cannot take the tax deduction. So essentially what happens is your contributions are going in after tax and are not reducing your taxable income. So the benefit is there's no income limitations, but the deductibility is determined by your income and also by what your workplace retirement benefits are. And that will determine if you're actually doing a traditional IRA or a non-deductible IRA. So once again, for 2026, the contribution limits are the same across the board. So if you're under 50, you can do 7,500, and if you're over 50, you can do 8,600 because you can do the catch up. Now, here are the rules. If you have earned income or a working spouse, to do a non-deductible IRA, we have to look at two things: your income, your modified adjusted gross income, and if you are covered by a workplace plan. So for example, you have modified adjusted gross income and you are covered by a workplace retirement plan. So for example, a 401k, and you are a single individual and your income, your modified adjusted gross income exceeds $91,000. You are not eligible for a traditional IRA. If you make a contribution to an IRA, it will be considered a non-deductible IRA. Now, if you are covered by a workplace plan and you are married filing joint and your income exceeds $149,000, once again, it is not deductible, meaning your monies are going in after tax. Now, when I say after tax, it's not Roth, it's just after tax. Now, if you do not have a workplace retirement plan, so you are not offered a 401k, for example, that's one available workplace plan, but your spouse has a workplace plan, right, because that counts too, then your modified adjusted income exceeds $252,000. Once again, it's still a non-deductible contribution. So if you're making a non-deductible contribution, and this is so the tricky part is if you're doing this online and you're just going online and making these contributions year after year after year, you really need to be monitoring what your workplace plan is offering you, right? So are you, for instance, participating in a 401k and your income is exceeding these numbers I just gave you, and you are then also doing what you think is a traditional IRA outside of work, it is actually non-deductible. And so then on top of that, what you need to be doing to track your contributions, because they're going in after tax, and it is your responsibility to track what you're doing, you need to be filing tax form 8606 each year to prevent that contribution amount. So in this instance, we'll say you're under 50 and you're doing 7,500. You are responsible as the owner of the account every year to file that form and track your basis. That will prevent you from being taxed twice. So the money that goes in, that $7,500, that's not getting you a tax break, goes in after tax. And so those monies will come back to you as long as you're tracking your basis, tax-free. They should not be taxed again. And then this account will continue to grow tax deferred. And when the monies do come out, they will be taxed at ordinary income rates, just like a traditional IRA. The difference is we have two types of money in one account, right? We have your after-tax contribution that should be return of basis or return of principal. And then we have your earnings, which will be taxed at ordinary income rates, just like a traditional IRA. So you end up having two types of money or two types of taxation inside of one account. This account, like a traditional IRA, will fall underneath the required minimum distribution rules. So if you were born after the year 1960, you will need to take distributions on this account starting at age 75. And when calculating distributions in the future, you will need to use the pro rata rule to calculate those. And so what the pro rata rule is it basically says when you're taking a distribution or when converting, but we're just going to talk about taking a distribution, the IRS treats all of your accounts that have IRA in the word, so traditional IRA, if you had a SEP IRA or simple IRA, as one single account, and then they calculate the taxation proportionally on the ratio of after tax, which is what you originally contributed, to the pre-tax funds, so the funds that the earnings that had not been taxed. So you want to keep that in mind for when you're going to do distributions down the road, that you have those two types and you will most likely fall underneath the pro rata rule. And it is also your responsibility to track all that basis. So if you do this every year for 30 years, it's your responsibility to track the basis using that form 8606. So you're going to hear me talk about the non-deductible IRA on the show this season. I don't love it because I don't like a lot of administration work. So I prefer to avoid any sort of extra admin work if I can. Now, other people will say, well, I really want to do it. That's your prerogative. It's just important to understand the parameters that involve the non-deductible, especially including that tax filing form. So make sure you're tracking your basis. My personal preference for my own life is I don't do it because I don't want to track the basis. I don't want to use the pro rata rule in the future. So I just don't touch it. But what I will say that we see often on the show, which is why I wanted to talk about this, is that people start out making traditional IRA contributions in the beginning. We'll say like 22, 23, they set up a traditional IRA, they're participating in the workplace plan, and they're making their traditional IRA contribution. Wonderful. That's great. But as years go on and their income goes up, they're no longer eligible and they don't realize that. And no one really tells them. So they're making what they say are, well, I have a traditional IRA. And then it turns out when we look at their income and their workplace plan that they're participating in, that they're actually not, it's not a traditional IRA anymore, that they're actually doing a non-deductible, but haven't been tracking it. And that's where it gets a little dicey, in my opinion, because it's like, what year was it non-deductible? Was it last year? Was it 3 years ago? And so you just always want to be mindful of how each of these vehicles work so that you can make the best decision for yourself and what you're looking for and what's going to serve you best with your financial goals. But the non-deductible IRA, I think, is one of the trickier vehicles because most people do it unwillingly or unknowingly. And so for both the traditional IRA and the Roth IRA, you have until the tax filing deadline of the following year. So once again, April 15th, generally for the following year, to make your contributions. But you just want to make sure you know if you're doing a traditional IRA, a non-deductible IRA, or a Roth IRA. And for our most up-to-date information, you can follow along on Instagram, which is Future Rich Podcast. And if you would like to be a guest on this season's show, we will be recording again in May, and you can submit an application to be a guest at www.futurerichpodcast.com. Time for our disclaimer. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results. Make sure that you consult with your own legal, tax, and/or financial advisor before making any decisions.